waiting for them to make a relevant Suicune dragon, whatever that, this raptor.
Why was that not in this set?
I don't know. It was one of the most hyped ones. People were so stoked about it.
Yeah.
The Raikou, too.
I just don't...
Well, everyone thought Paradox Raikou was going to be spicy, and then they got a giraffe.
Yeah.
I like the design.
I was going to say, like, a little later after the fact, I'm more into it than I was at first.
Welcome to the Moxstars podcast. I'm Evan Kunai, one of your hosts, and I'm here with Jordan Garcia.
Yo, what is up?
And we have no Christopher Ritter today. He is out, but he will be back next week. Welcome to the show, everybody, the #1 podcast on the internet for Magic the Gathering and Dr. Pepper. If you are listening to this, thank you. If you're watching this, you already know where to find us. You can find us on YouTube. Give us that thumbs up, hit that bell for more notifications, and more importantly, subscribe. And subscribe to us on all of major podcasting platforms. Huge shout out to all of our patrons. If you're not a patron,
you suck. Is that what you're going to say? I was trying to guess.
That's just flat out, very simple way to put it.
There's only like 7 people that don't suck.
Yeah. 17,000.
You're right, 100%.
Yeah.
Just kidding, you don't suck, but consider.
You can check out the description below on the YouTube video to find a link to our Patreon. For $3, you can become an official Pepperhead, where you get the Pepperhead role on our Discord server. Be sure to join that. And you get access to 2 exclusive channels on the Discord server, the Dr. Pepper channel and the Shower Thoughts channel, where we take a little bit of our time on every single episode to talk about some shower thoughts.
Yeah, if you were confused about why we were called Pepperheads until the Patreon talk, it's because we forgot to say that we are the best podcast on the internet for Magic and, of course, Dr. Pepper.
No, did we forget to say that?
We did forget to say it.
Oh.
Unless you didn't, in which case you won't find out until you edit this.
Well, we've said it 2 or 3 times now. Wee-oh.
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper. All right. Today, we're talking about a few things. There is a lot. Hence, the new intro. There is a lot to talk about that made me go, wah, 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 wah.
That's a new intro every week now, just by the way.
And I went, wah. And so there was a lot of information that came out in just this past week that has just overwhelmed us. There is so much product coming down the tube and so much new information, because not only did we get announcements for product, we're actually seeing new cards. So
100%.
Jordan, I'm just going to let you take this one. The most hyped IP that you could ever want. What is it?
It's Jurassic Park. I'm just kidding. That's your thing, obviously. Dude, we are talking about the freaking, I'm trying not to swear, Fallout set.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Fallout thing. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I'm kind of confused about where we are at with the world and state of things. The things used to just be a secret layer, and now they are a set or a commander product, and now they are a set plus 4 commander products plus a secret layer that accompanies, plus 3 months later another special version. So I just don't really know what each of these are yet, and I don't know when I will know those things. But we're talking about the cards we've seen so far, which are just a few of them, and we're talking about the Fallout Universes Beyond set. I'm not going to say set. Cards.
The cards that were announced just this past week, all very exciting. There are plenty of new legends. There's also a lot of really well done, flavorful mechanics.
This is one of my favorite things about Magic the Gathering, is when you can see a card that is well made, in that it ties in the flavor of what the art and writing represents and what the card does in the lore with what it mechanically does. And I think that is always a huge win when you can successfully do that. And I think a lot of these hit that mark for me. So it's very, 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 very cool. So right up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we know for a fact that we're getting some commander decks out of this because we're getting reskinned variants of commander staples, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Command Tower.
Oh, I see.
You know, so there are going to be commander decks that come out with this, but they already announced that. They announced the face commanders. I do know that for a fact.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't hate the Pip-Boy Arcane Signet. I think that's kind of lit.
Yeah.
But talking about some new cards, because we all know what Arcane Signet does. One card I'm very interested in is Vats. I think this is very, very cool. One, Vats is just a huge flavor win for me in the game. I love Fallout, but it's excellent removal at instant speed, which we don't see a lot of these days.
We don't see split second on cards.
Exactly. You love to see split second.
Yep.
Okay, so Vats is 2 black for an instant split second. Choose any number of target creatures with equal toughness. Destroy the chosen creatures.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of potential for removal in this card.
100%. Yeah.
And it's like anytime we've seen, well, one, split second is amazing, right? But outside of that, anytime you've seen where you have the option of picking and choosing and like, you know, almost like a Fire Covenant, but without having to lose all the life, you know, if you can achieve that similar effect, I think this card's a dub.
Yeah, it's the very flavorful, like you said, because if you've ever played like Fallout 3, I think this is where like this whole thing, like for me, that's where I derive it from. But I just remember like going into Vats, you know, and then as many bullets as you have in your clip, you're able to shoot, you know, give you a percentage or whatever to shoot that particular area of the creature or whatever. And so that's depicted in the artwork, one. And then two, not only does the effect actually make sense and stick with that flavor, like you said, it's also incredibly powerful. We, for the last few months, have been talking about like when you boil down all the numbers statistics wise, how many creatures have 2 toughness, how many creatures have 3 toughness, you know, and then if you're playing against decks that prioritize tokens, like all 1/1s or generally base 1 toughness, so you have the ability to snipe a million tokens that were created. It stops a Dualcaster Mage line, you know, it stops Cheeky Jiki lines, you know, it just does a lot.
I think we all have the math in our heads from recent memory because Stern Scolding came out and we all ran the numbers.
Yes.
And then, what is the other card? Oh, Talion. Talion came out and we all ran the numbers, right? So it's like, I think it's fresh in our memory that I was like, this card could probably do a lot of stuff. This can probably do a lot of damage.
Yeah, and when it comes down to, I guess, when it comes down to interrupting combos, anything with split second is already valuable. We've talked about for the last couple weeks that we want to be playing Force of Despair more often due to that just like instant speed, sort of like selective destruction. And this is now like, you don't get the free casting cost, but you do have far more control over what you're destroying.
And it's definitely going to resolve.
Yeah, and it will definitely resolve, which is also wonderful.
I think honestly here, so far for me, the wins are the flavor wins, like you said. Like some of these legendary creatures that you can build commander decks out of, I'm really interested in. I think I'm going to build a lot of casual decks out of the stuff we've seen today between this and the Ixalan stuff coming out.
Yep.
Mr. House, I'm really excited to build. It's a Mardu card for just straight up Mardu, red, white, black. Mr. House, President and CEO. He's a legendary artifact creature human, 0/4. Then it says, whenever you roll a 4 or higher, create a 3/3 robot artifact creature token. If you rolled a 6 or higher instead, create that token and a treasure. And then it says 4 tap, roll a 6-sided die plus an additional 6-sided die for each mana from treasures spent to activate this ability.
Notably, it doesn't care about how many sides are on your die. So if you have cards that say D20, congratulations. You're probably, the odds are in your favor. You're probably rolling over 6.
Hitting a 6 on a D6 is kind of tough, but hitting a 6 over a 6 on a D20, pretty chill.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of shenanigans you can do in this deck, and I plan to do all of them.
Yeah, definitely more fun. And you can, let's see, you can probably have a little fun with this because there's that that legendary creature that allows you to create copies of itself every time you roll so high on the dice, and then you can keep re-rolling if you roll high enough.
Yeah, I like that they've added enough in recent history that I think this won't be a stale deck by any means. There's lots of cool stuff. Like I'm thinking about those D&D dragons, right? Every time you know the combat damage, roll for a D20.
Totally.
Like,
you're generating treasures already, so it's kind of like you will hopefully get to those dragons.
Right. And then I one time paying 4 I love tracking the mana from the treasures. So spending 4 treasures to activate him lets you roll 5 6-sided die, which looks just like you are, you know, in Vegas.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just mega vibes. I love it.
There are 2 more cards that I really want to talk about before we move on from this. The other one, or one of the 2, is one of the face cards on one of the commander decks, the Wise Mothman.
Oh, yeah, this is a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, this is what everyone is sort of like hot on. I think that when you see a new legendary creature, the first thought in commander players' minds is, how does this go infinite, if at all? So 1, a black, green, and a blue for a legendary creature insect mutant, 3/3 flyer. Whenever the Wise Mothman enters the battlefield or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. Whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. Now, or if you're not familiar with what a rad counter is, it's a radiation counter. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have any rad counters, mill that many cards. For each non-land card milled this way, you lose 1 life and a rad counter. You lose a rad counter. I think we read it wrong differently, but you lose a rad counter if you milled a non-land card that way. So it doesn't keep stacking and compiling like I think we had theorized prior, but the deck is still very good because everyone is talking about how you can basically...
It's not as cool as I thought it was.
You can basically food chain your way to a win. It does trigger on the main phase of the next player's turn, so you don't win immediately, but you do...
We get like 6 new food chain commanders every set. Who cares?
Hey,
I just wanted a cool new mechanic, and it's lame.
Yeah,
now.
it turns out food chain is a good card. All right, moving on. The next card, Rad Storm. I think everyone's very excited about this. 3 and a blue, instant, storm, proliferate.
Yeah, it's so simple.
That's it. 2 words.
It's so simple, and I think that's what I love about it. More than like its impact on the metagame or anything. I just love that it says 2 words on it.
I think that initially I was like kind of ragging on this card because the mana value is so high. But I think when you put it in perspective of the entire power of every card in the game and all the things that deal with counters, that it's honestly not undercost. It's not overcosted. It's appropriately costed.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a generically good card. Like it goes in a very specific deck, but it's a deck that will be sitting and holding up mana all the time.
Totally.
So if they are the ones storming off, great. I think if, you know, somebody else just pops off and has a great turn and then you're just like, sick, proliferate, win the game somehow. I think there's a lot of options for what this card can do. I know our buddy and patron, fellow Pepperhead Tordith, has a sick Jin Gitaxis list, the Saga Boy.
Oh, yeah.
And we've been talking about it a little bit already. And I sent this to him immediately. I was like, this seems lit in that. Like, just being able to, like, plow through and, like, rip all of your, you know, Saga in one turn. That seems like awesome.
Yeah, so Fallout stuff looks very exciting right off the bat.
That's pretty much it for right now. It's just mostly the card design I'm very excited about. Like there's a few other, like, check them out. There's a few other legendary creatures, but just fun card design is what I'm really excited to see.
Totally. Moving on to the next set that was revealed to us.
Set of cards. We don't know.
Set of cards, yeah.
A collection of random cards.
I do know for a fact, I'm just going to bundle these 2 together. We are now starting to see the spoilers for Caverns of Ixalan.
Yes.
And along with that, we're seeing new cards from a Jurassic Park supplementary set.
Oh my God, that's what it is?
I'm pretty sure, you know, question mark. But what is happening is... Oh, it's a secret lair. It's a secret lair. Okay, we're fine.
Is it just a secret lair?
I don't know. I don't know.
We'll find out. Again, in the Jurassic Park / Caverns of Ixalan episode, we will have this information for you.
Yes, we will. There is a lot of, like, there's a bunch of new cards designed specifically like with Jurassic Park in mind. So they tried to keep these cards very flavorful. We're seeing the Indoraptor, the Perfect Hybrid, which is a Jund legendary creature, dinosaur mutant, has Bloodthirst X Menace, and Enrage. Whenever Indoraptor is dealt damage, choose an opponent at random. Indoraptor deals damage equal to its power to that player unless they sacrifice a non-token creature, which is really great. It's a 3/1, so if they've lost life this turn, if you're not familiar with Bloodthirst X, it enters with +1/+1 counters equal to the amount of life the opponent has lost this turn. So the amount of damage dealt to your opponent. So you have to be able to deal the damage, not loss of life.
And then when he attacks?
No, when he enters, he gets that many counters. Oh, and whenever he's dealt damage, it's Enrage.
Oh, and then it's whenever he's dealt damage, he does that much damage to another creature, and then excess damage is dealt to the owner?
No, not at all.
There's two different dinosaurs we're talking about.
Yes, there are.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
So Indoraptor's pretty cool. I think the one you're talking about is Ravenous Tyrannosaurus.
There's just too many dinos.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
Not too many dinos. There's a lot of dinos.
There is the perfect amount.
This is a cool one.
Yeah, so for 4, a red, and a green, this is not a legendary creature, but it is just a dinosaur. Should be legendary. Devour 3. And as it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This creature enters the battlefield with 3 times that many +1/+1 counters on it for each of those creatures. Whenever it attacks, it deals damage equal to its power up to 1 other target creature. Excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller.
Bingo.
Instead. Yeah, kind of awesome, right?
Yeah, I think that is just so clean. Well, one, Devour is just so much better than I remember it.
Yeah.
Sacrificing one creature for 3 counters is nutty.
It's a very Gruul mechanic, and there's a legendary Gruul creature that is Devour X is its ability. And so if you sacrifice 6 creatures, you get 6 +1/+1 counters for each creature sacrificed that way. So, yeah, so it can kind of get crazy and out of control. There are a few other ones. We're getting, again, more command towers. We're getting a really cool new card, which we've been talking about on the Discord server, just kind of like brainstorming the ideas that can go along with this. But I don't know if you are crazy about this card or not yet, but you will be. Dino DNA.
Sell me on it, because I'm not yet.
Not yet. A 1-mana artifact. You can pay 1 to tap. Exile target creature card from a graveyard, activate only as a sorcery. Note that it does not limit you to just 1 creature imprint. You can keep imprinting creatures onto this. Very flavorful, because in Jurassic Park they said they got literally hundreds of strands of different dinosaurs' DNA from 1 single mosquito. So kind of a cool flavor.
I see.
Yeah. You can pay 6 mana, create a token that's a copy of target creature card, exiled with Dino DNA, except it's a 6/6 green dinosaur creature with trample. Activate only as a sorcery. I think Wizards of the Coast is very aware of their Colossal Dreadmaw meme thing, that they're very in touch with the social side of the game, because that is just a Colossal Dreadmaw that you're creating by paying 6 mana. It's awesome.
6 mana 6/6?
Yeah.
What you're saying?
Yeah, but it's a creature that has the effect of whatever you exiled with it. So obviously not impossible to create Dockside loops with this.
I was going to say, can you imagine paying 6 for a Dockside that gets like 12 more treasures or something like that?
Yeah. So there's ways to do it where you can Dockside loop if...
Oh, and you can create the same token.
Yes.
So, yeah. So
after... And you can exile other things. So after you create your infinite mana with Dockside loops or whatever, you can then create infinite of the other thing too. Or other thing.
But you have to tap to exile it. So you can only have... You should probably already have it in the bank. But pretty much if you can make 7 mana with Dockside, you can go infinite.
Yeah. Yep.
That's actually gross.
So for 1 mana artifact, not that bad.
I also saw the boys were talking in the Discord about Kinnan taking advantage of this card a lot.
Yes.
And then also like... maybe infinitely activating with Thoracle. I don't know.
Yeah. Tordeth was on there talking about like just putting like in a million Thoracle triggers on the stack so that you can just like basically guarantee the win. There's a few other things. There's a board wipe called Don't Move, 3 and 2 white. Destroy all tapped creatures until your next turn. Whenever a creature becomes tapped, destroy it. So flavorful, honestly. They're doing a new set of basic lands, and
I was just looking at those.
Hopefully it's 10 basic lands, because there's 2 separate artworks. If they split it up into 5 and 5, for $40 for each one, I will be furious.
Yeah.
It better be 10. It better
know it's gonna be.
It should just be 10 foil or not 10 foil basic lands for $40, in which case I will consider it. Like, that is actually not a bad deal. But we're looking at a lot of really interesting cards from this. To note, we're also, this is actually kind of a...
I was just looking at this. What the fuck is this?
What are you looking at?
What you just looked at. Special guests?
Oh, yeah. So along with all this information that was spoiled, we also received new information on reprints that we'll see for Lost Caverns of Ixalan special guests.
So special guests are just popping up in the set?
I'm sorry. No, this is like a game nights thing. So this is like you show up for an event and you get these.
You get a mana crypt at that event?
Yeah. That's why they're doing all these like different colors of it and stuff like that. So
okay.
The Calamax, the Stormsire, is a new borderless foil version of Calamax. Looks really great. The new most expensive version of Underworld Breach will also be available.
Dude, this Underworld Breach is nutty looking.
Yeah. Thrasios, Triton Hero.
Also looks great. I think this art is fantastic.
The new most expensive version of Thrasios,
for sure.
Bridge from Below. I'm not sure where this card is still seeing play. Hasn't really seen play in Modern since Ragavan was printed, so who knows. But
we'll wait for these two ringers of highly played cards.
Yeah, and Star Compass, which...
Star Compass and Lord of Atlantis, unless you're on Merfolk Modern.
Right. Okay, so the Jurassic Park stuff, really cool. The special guest stuff, obviously really cool. Notable reprints that everyone has been wanting to see for a long time. Now, on to the Caverns of Ixalan stuff. We're not going to do too many things, but there's one card of note, one of the face commanders, which we have been discussing a lot recently. It is right up my alley. It's something that Guy on the Discord server really wants to build as well. So,
oh yes, wait for it.
This is going to be a Brewstorm.
Finally something that goes with food chain.
Finally something that I will particularly enjoy. Pantalaza, the sun favored.
How much do you like saying Pantalaza?
Pantalaza!
I'm still not quite sure how to say it.
Pantalaza.
That's how you say it.
Pantalaza. I don't really know.
You should have to say it high pitch and that confident, and you should be fine.
And I cast Pantalaza. It is a legendary creature, dinosaur, 4/4. It is 5 mana. Yay! I was wondering if it was or not, but it is. 2 red, green, white. So we're right in the Naya wheelhouse. Whenever Pantalaza, sun favored, or another dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may discover X, where X is the creature's toughness. Do this only once each turn. So first, let's discuss Discover. Discover is a new mechanic coming into Caverns of Ixalan that well, it's better Cascade. Like on the face, that's what it reads like. It is exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with that mana value or less. Cast it without paying its mana cost, or put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Yeah, it's just like updated, modernized Cascade.
But it allows you to cast something with the same mana value, or if there's a Drannith Magistrate on the battlefield, it doesn't restrict you from just putting that card into your hand and drawing one.
Yeah, I think having option there is great.
You're just revealing information. So is there something stopping you? Awesome, just put it in your hand, and then you will go
something with a cast trigger instead. You know, some reason you want to have in your hand. That happens all the time. Yeah,
revealing like a Elder Spirit Guide off of this would obviously feel awful. So put it in my hand instead. Like, really cool. Like, oh, in Endurance, I don't need that right now. I'll just put it in my hand instead. So there's a lot of really great things you can do here. One notable thing is, like Jordan said, it goes with Food Chain, because while it only says that do this only once each turn, it is a new permanent each time it enters the battlefield. And so if you Food Chain with it, it will infinitely trigger your Discover. You'll discover 4 infinitely until you go through your entire library. So
it is pretty fun. I think this is a very fresh new take for Naya that is very cool.
Yeah. Notably, you can hit an Academy Rector off of this. So if you are to hit Pantalaza onto the battlefield, in response to a trigger, you can cast a Worldly Tutor, put Academy Rector on top of your library, and then cast it for free. Reveal it as the first card, cast it for free, and continue from there. Another unique interaction is that since you're playing dinosaurs, probably, there aren't too many that if you're playing this in cEDH that are going to be valuable to what you're trying to do. But I do think that one that does make the cut is Marauding Raptor. It came from Core 21, I believe, or Core 20. I think it's Core 21.
The Zero wheelhouse.
Yeah, so it's 1 in a red for a dinosaur that says creature spells you cast cost 1 less. And it's a 2/3 for 2 mana. So it's undercosted for its stats, but that just makes the Discover trigger even better. I thought it was a 3/1 for 2 mana, and I thought it was going to have a terrible Discover trigger, but it doesn't. You can actually grab something with 3 mana value or less.
I see.
But it also says, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Marauding Raptor deals 2 damage to it. If that creature is a dinosaur, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. I don't know if it gains haste. I don't think it does, but maybe it does. It's notable because you can now basically use Panchalaza to grab the Academy Rector, put it onto the field or whatever, and the Academy Rector will hit the battlefield, Marauding Raptor will kill it immediately, and then you can start the food chain loop.
Very fun.
Yeah.
And it's dino themed.
And it's a dinosaur that triggers Panchalaza.
You love to see it. I will say, because you're talking about Panchalaza, which is from the Commander decks coming out with Ixalan. They are doing another thing, just brace yourselves, called the Treasure Trove. Again, have not fully done my research. Don't know if it's showing up just in the Commander versions or what, but it is some alternate arts of some artifacts, because it's like Ixalan, caverns, treasure finding.
Yeah.
There's a pretty, they're all like borderless foil or borderless. There's a pretty sick looking Chalice of the Void that looks awesome. That was a pretty sick reprint. Amulet of Vigor, that's actually a pretty solid needed reprint too. That's an expensive card, and this is now a nice bougie version of it.
Oh yeah.
And then get your Expedition map and Arcane Signet and Course of Portal. Why not?
Well, I think the Expedition map is downshifted, which is nice. Maybe it's always been uncommon, but
there's no way that was a rare.
I don't know. Searching for any land, like we were talking about earlier, is pretty valuable.
Busted. So there's some other commanders, but we will cover that on the later app, specifically talking about this. Anything else you want to talk about?
Not really from this set. There were a couple new things to come out today, but we will cover those in a future episode.
Again, I will say I'm excited about it because it is mechanics represented well, or flavor represented well in the mechanics. And I think there's a lot of new interesting mechanics as well that we can all build around and, maybe get some upgrades in decks. I think there's a lot of casual stuff I'm actually looking to build out of a lot of stuff I've seen today.
Yeah, totally. All right. We're moving on to our main subject.
Just winged a new riff for us, a transition.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Well, yes, today, it was kind of a 50-50 app. We were talking, there's so much to cover with all the info we got this week. Holy God. And we could have gone forever. But we are talking about earning your spot on Olympus. How do new decks and archetypes break into a figured out meta and make a name for themselves? How to get out of Fringe.
Yeah, basically, how does a deck make the transition? When does it make the transition? And what type of results do we need to consistently see to say, well, this is now a consistent enough deck to just take to tournaments and expect to win? Like, for example, Blue Farm.
Yeah, exactly, right? So we have the tried and trues, the Olympian gods, if you will, right?
Yeah.
The ones that are just, there are altars that, pure or mere mortals like worship at, right? We have like Blue Farm, like I said. We have Najeela, Kenrith.
Yeah, a few gods that stand above everybody else. It's like these are the decks that show up.
Winota, that is the stacks deck.
Yes. So we're wondering, and we want to have the conversation today about when a deck makes that transition and when a deck probably won't be able to make that transition.
That is the thing, yeah.
Like,
rarely does it happen. Rarely does a human become a god.
Right. So we're seeking today our Hercules.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I have a candidate in mind.
Please.
Well, before we get to it, let's talk about some fringe decks that probably won't make the cut. Like, probably not rising above the ranks to godhood. One, it's just very obvious, a deck I've been playing for a while, Shalai Halar. That is
what
the
are you
type,
talking about?
It's the type of deck that won't ever make it.
Why is that?
Because it's one of those decks that comes out and people talk about it right away, and they're very excited about the 2-card combo that will win you the game. It's just there's a certain point when something is new that everyone does their research, and once you've seen it enough, once you've seen it happen one time, once you've seen it happen once as a player, you remember and you know how to adjust and adapt and make sure it doesn't happen again. You know, if you're sitting across the table and you lose to Shalai and Halar, I'm not going to get you twice with it.
Yeah, I think there's just the difference is just like, can you just always do what you're going to do? And which in your situation, you can't.
No.
But like, Najeela is always going to Najeela. Blue Farm is always going to Blue Farm. Kenrith is always going to Kenrith.
Right. Those are effects that are really hard to stop. And for whatever reason, they're resilient, or it's not even for whatever reason. They're just resilient. And I think that's where I think decks that aren't ever going to make the transition they lack resiliency.
Well, one thing to look at, you know, it's an easy place to start, right? Is like access to cards and colors. So, you know, you're stuck in Naya, whereas every card we just discussed, and all these gods are 4 or 5 color, right? They have much bigger and better card pools. You're missing blue and black, which really helps win the game sometimes.
Yes.
So not that Shalai and Halar can't win. It threatens to win literally all the time. It's just that these decks are better prepared to, one, deal with decks that are trying to win, but also find ways to support their own wins when their win conditions are arguably the best in the format, because they are playing the best cards in the format. They're playing the things that are lowest to the ground, the easiest to accomplish, and things that we don't get the opportunity to do because you and I like to play kind of more of these fringe decks. We like to play something that's unique and a little weird, but because of that, it comes at a cost.
You got to play bad cards.
You got to play bad cards sometimes, and sometimes bad cards is synergy and fun and stuff like that. And sometimes these decks, these gods, they don't have emotions anymore. They're gods.
You got to be willing to shed emotion, to shed all emotion and all connection to the human condition in order to play these decks in their most robotic, whatever way. You know, there are people who have gone out there and just printed the top Blue Farm list and gone to tournament with it, not playing it ever before, and placing. Well,
I'm not, you cannot say that it's a deck.
That is a player.
That is a player.
Yeah, you know, but it's like the combination of those things, right? So the deck itself is very good, but everything comes down to the pilot, I think.
Right.
Yeah, you just can't pilot. And no, anybody can't pilot Blue Farm to a win, but it is a deck that if you do know the nuances of the game and know when to interact and everything like that,
if you're a good player, picking it up is going to feel really easy.
Yeah, you can find yourself more often in a position to win the game than losing the game.
Right. Where if you're doing more of a fringe strategy, you need to know the deck, probably have built the deck. You get the ins and outs and the ticks and stuff like that, where for example, I put that Najeela list together like a year ago, and you and I just pick it up from time to time and just win literally every game we play.
It's so explosive. It's a deck that that's why it's one of the gods on the mountain. So looking at new cards, it's like Panchlaza, one of those cards where it's like it's figured out. Rocco, I think, is starting to make the transition. I think that's one of those. If you guys have listened to us before or in the past, we've also mentioned going to Eminence's top 16 list. It'll show you the top 16 decks. It'll also show you the top 50 decks if you want to see that have consistently placed. I would say the top 12 decks would be the top of Olympus, right? Decks that have maybe a high enough win percentage are consistent enough.
Yeah, I mean, you just say top 10-ish, I think is fine. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but I think Rocco is one of those decks making the transition.
Top 10.
Yeah, because it's really hard to stop. It's very consistent. And the fact is, Rocco's ability is open-ended to there's no containment. There is no ceiling.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting card to bring up, right? Because it goes against what I was just saying. It's not a 4 or 5 color deck. It's not just playing generically good cards. It has a game plan. It's specific game plan with specific cards, and it's stuck in 3 colors. It has the massive upside of that it's just an extremely busted card in that you get a tutor in an imaginary zone outside of your hand or deck.
Yeah, you get 2 creatures for the whatever you're casting it for, and that's like one of. I just can't believe they've made it an uncommon. Like redo it. It's a mythic. Like that
it's
ability.
a mythic level card, 100%.
Yeah. And like Pencilazza has this like really fun nuance of being this like dinosaur centric deck where everything 4 or less in your deck and you can run through your whole library, hopefully run into some win conditions. Rocco, whatever you want to do, man, like play all good cards as long as if you get to food chain, you've won the game. There are also different ways to do it because it can just straight up search for Dockside and just put it right on the battlefield, start your chain and just go off.
Yeah,
it's that good. Like,
yeah, so I think that card is definitely a contender. I think we've been seeing a ton of Kinnan just the last 6 months, just placing high in tournaments, taking tournaments.
For me, that's already there.
Yeah,
like,
for me,
yeah.
Kinnan is easily like top 10 for sure in the Olympians.
It's proven. Like
it is proven, and it's just one of those cards or like one of those setups at this point where it's just new cards will come out that makes the deck even better, and it'll be so hard to ever catch that, like catch up to that from like a deck that already exists for it to ever catch up. But there's like also some other decks that's interesting where it's like you think it has a shot or it should or it doesn't for some reason or another, right? Like we had Cody. Cody came in and was an extremely explosive deck, being able to offer ad nauseam consistently turn 2 every single game, every single hand is insane.
You'd be very scared of it. Like I remember playing against it and I was absolutely terrified. I mulliganed so I could have a collector oof in hand to start the game.
Yeah. So you would think there would be more to that deck, like having, you know, a contending spot for Olympus, but nowhere near the top.
Yeah. Another deck, Magda. We all thought like for a long time, Magda is very good. Like I think, but
True.
I think that it had this escalation to a point, and then we've all figured out how to stop it. We all figured out how to play against it because, well, if you don't control Magda, you don't win the game.
Yeah, for as good as Magda's ability is, it suffers from being monocolored
And a 2/1.
and having to deal with dwarves and just card quality and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So where, you know, Rocco gets to absolutely optimize every card slot in its limited colors, like it still gets enough excellent cards in those slots where it's like at a certain point, even playing like Urza, you have to play suboptimal cards.
There's just no, like I said, there's no ceiling on Rocco. All you have to do is generate mana. Like, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, if we're
right.
I've seen enough of Rocco lately to say that is definitely a top 10 card for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's as long as like Tordeth is an amazing pilot for that deck. And honestly, he probably understands it to a degree that I could never understand it.
100%.
Unless I played it for 2 or 3 years. You know, it's like...
No, he's a psycho about his deck. Like you like just watch it play out, and it's nutty.
Oh, it's turn 2?
Every time.
And he wins, yeah. So
time. I have something that I think that is notable as the opposite of Cody. Cody was explosive and petered out immediately. Yeah. Something that has been there for a long time with cards that are tried and true from the same era, right? Like Rogsai and everything like that. Dargo recently.
Well, this is my Hercules candidate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
You pitched it. No. I'm only saying this because you brought this up to me yesterday, and I totally agree. It's just like, holy cow, what a come up Dargo has had in the last few months, dude.
Yep.
Like, not only just one singular deck, though. The fact that his partner has come up more than I feel like most partners at all. He has 3 or 4 different decks in rotation.
This is why he's my candidate, because he is the most flexible. Like, I think that it took a while for people to see it, but, you know, rewind back to Commander Legends, reprint him at the proper rarity. He's a mythic. Like, he's a mythic,
100%.
He's a mythic level, like, ability, because he can consume creatures and artifacts as a part of the casting cost.
Yeah, a sack outlet that's just floating.
Yeah, that's floating right there. And he
really good when you have, you know, Academy Rector or whatever.
Now, imagine you could tap a treasure for 3 mana. That's what Dargo does.
You want Jeweled Lattice to give you more mana? It's 5 mana, bro.
Yeah. That's the thing, is that, like Jordan said, the partner mechanic very open-ended. You can create a lot of different combinations with these decks. Dargo, I don't know why we didn't see it sooner, or like people weren't playing. Maybe it just took some time to like earn its stripes, right?
This is the Hercules. He's fighting his way up. He's not a god to start.
Yeah, I had to go through the trials. And so Dargo has Naya list. Dargo has Teamer list. It has probably Jeskai list somewhere.
The Grixis list is very interesting.
Yeah, that's a deck I actually want to play. I feel like Grixis Dargo is actually my style of play in colors I don't normally pursue.
That's pretty cool.
So I want to print it. I want to try it out. It seems like a lot of fun. But it also seems really fucking good.
Yeah, Dargo is just very, very good.
Yeah.
I think he's come a long way, and some people have been pushing him in like the brewing and then also playing him to, tournament. In fact, obviously, like people don't respect a deck unless there's like tournament reports on it and stuff like that. So in order for these decks to start making a name for themselves, not only do they need to have a placement, but they need to consistently place, right? Like, I will say, like, Winota, we haven't heard from Winota in a while.
I know, that's one that I was like, maybe the era of Winota is, like, ending. It is still there, still hanging on to godhood as far as, like, you respect it at the table. Like, I think Winota earns a lot of respect.
I just don't think we've seen it a lot lately, but I don't think I don't think we count it out. I still think, like, there's still this conversation of, is 75 versus 90 minutes better, right? I think if we go to 90 minutes, we see more Stax decks come up. I think we see more Winota, more Jetmir.
Yeah. There's decks that I could even say are Titans, right? So like the previous era of gods, like Teferi Chainveil came out of nowhere to sweep CCU. It's like we don't know how that happened, but some decks also get just really good.
Still have some old power back in the bones.
There's still some magic left to be had in those decks because we're printing new cards that are only making those decks better. So there's still the chance of like a deck can there's a resurgence for them. So like Winota, I don't count it out. Like I still think it's probably the biggest threat at the table when I sit down. Like I don't discount it. It's just, it's been struggling to put up results lately.
Really has. So I mean, I don't think it's the only factor, but I think it is obviously a huge part of it. And I totally agree with you. You said it, like new cards, I think is what otherwise like a new commander has to get printed and be like, that's busted.
Yep.
Otherwise, right now we're in this situation where it's just like new cards come out and then there's like a shifting in the hierarchy because one of those gods or one of those contenders gets to like, oh, I actually use that better than everybody else. And because of that, you start like squeaking your way up, right? So I think a few cards really already existed with Dargo, obviously, but I think that deck just keeps getting better and better. But then we see things like Agatha's Soul Cauldron get printed, right? And all of a sudden, obviously, we haven't talked about it, but Sisay is definitely a god.
Yep.
Sisay is definitely top 10.
Has made the transition.
Top 5, top 3, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But Agatha's Soul Cauldron in that deck is just like, oh my God. It's like you're playing Diablo or any of those kind of games, and you're already level 100, but you're like, hey, I just found a more busted equipment than I already had. So
yeah, it just cements itself in like, if there was any chance that if it were not to put up results for a couple years, I think it would still maintain godhood just because of like that, just the cards that it has access to, right? That just make it so flexible, so resilient, and allow you to just open the gates and just run through the table, like win games so easily.
And honestly, if we're being honest, Wizards of the Coast has recognized that Commander is the best selling format, so let's print as many legendary creatures as physically possible every year.
It doesn't even make much sense to print so many, but they do anyway.
But they will anyway.
Yep.
So because of that, she's getting a lot of fun toys every year.
Yes. And I feel like they're running out of gas a little bit. Pantlaza? I'm gonna get an altar with blue jeans on it. It's a raptor.
I think I don't know. I like the naming, some of the naming schemes they're going for, but it is definitely kind of silly.
It was a little silly, but
so for as much as I think there are obviously cards that are going to continue to come out and boon decks and push them forward. There are also cards will come out and shift metas in the opposite direction. I think like things like Orcish Bowmasters, right? Anything that really heavily relies on dorks, that starts getting shifted back down a little bit. Because dorks are really, really bad right now.
Yep.
And then, like anything outside of dorks, but still dies the Bowmaster. It's like Najila, really suffers when a fucking Bowmaster's on the battlefield, bro.
Yep.
Really bad.
One draw trigger on the stack, and then it's just like Bone Master.
Kendrith is fine.
5/5.
5/5, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then if someone dare snipe one of your other creatures, you could literally just put a +1/+1 counter on it in response.
Yeah, I was definitely like in the party of decks that got worse when Bowmaster came around, because the deck that I was playing at the time heavily relied on dorks. And this is where Rocco, in Naya, most Naya decks want dorks, right? They don't want to rely on artifacts because other decks do, and so they probably put in stacks to limit them from playing too many of them. But yeah, when a Bowmaster comes in and snipes your bird that you're relying on for next turns, like...
Yeah, or you're
combo,
like, you kept that hand because you're like, color fixing, perfect, we'll keep it.
Nope, yeah, it's 2 mana, it's very low to the floor, and it punishes those decks, so it just keeps you out of the game and prevents you from winning. That's
But you're
pretty
not
much
going
it.
to run into Orcish Bowmasters that often, are you?
Well, you know...
Just kidding. It's going to be every single game.
It's every game.
Every single game, multiple decks.
I think that when it first came out, people were like, I don't think it's that busted. I think they knew it was that busted. And that first tournament we went to...
Oh, my God. It was the last one we went to.
Well, yeah, the last one we went to, but the one right as Bowmasters released, we went to one. Or maybe I did. I went to the one in Moscow.
Oh.
Right? I saw it every game.
Yeah.
Every game. The one ring. I saw it so often. It's like, yeah.
Laughing Dragon, dude, like 100%. Orcish Bowmasters almost every game.
Yep. Just turns out 1 damage pointed anywhere on the field. Really good.
And everybody's looking at that, and they're not looking at the 8/8 that just came out of there from one turn.
Yeah. Turns out drawing cards is a pretty great mechanic in the game of Magic. So, yeah, those cards just help bolster those decks that aren't really punished by, or they're just resilient enough to not be affected by those things. So like Rocco, even though it's a 3/1, doesn't matter. Throw it back in the command zone. I don't care. That's where I want it.
Yeah, Justin usually is actually pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and that's a deck that doesn't rely on dorks. Like, you're probably not tutoring for a dork. You're probably tutoring for a dockside. Like, you're probably tutoring for the thing that's going to win you the game. Like, the only thing that you would be worried about getting sniped is maybe the symbiote or whatever, the...
Wirewood?
Yeah, Wirewood symbiote.
Yeah.
So that's really the only thing you would worry about getting sniped. Everything else is just going to come straight from the library onto the field, and you can just play as many turbo rocks as you want. So that's why it's a resilient deck still.
Yeah, I think that's like, I've kind of done this analysis, and we've gone to more tournaments and stuff like that. I just more and more am looking at like these gods, right, and what makes them godly, and I'm trying to like use that in my gameplay and then also in like my deck building and stuff like that. Like, if I don't have access to what they have, maybe because I'm like 3 colors versus 5 colors, which is usually what I like, I still need to make sure that I have that level of resilience. I need to make sure that if I attempt to win, then I have a backup plan, you know? Or if I attempt it, then I know it's protected. Or if there's a situation where I'm locked out, then I know I have the card to address that. And I think that's what 5-color decks and like toolboxy decks are really great at doing, and are also what dominate our format right now. And I think like I'm always trying to build with that. So in Grixis, I'm always trying to have a plan about like, I need to tutor for this because I have this one card that's like a silver bullet that gets me out of said situation. But it's not a niche enough or a low quality enough card to where your deck is getting worse. Like it still has that playability. Yeah,
most stuff you're at the certain point where these decks are, they only get better as better cards are released. So like Modern Horizons 3 that's going to come out, I think these decks just get a little bit stronger.
Oh my God, 100%.
You know, they get a little bit better. And more than, you know, like resiliency is great. I think that is probably the key factor in a lot of these decks maintaining their position. But then the reason they got there is because they're so consistent. And so that's what we're seeing from Dargo now, is that it sneezes and goes infinite. And so you're seeing consistency that is unparalleled in other decks that just rely on kitschy strategies to get to where they need to go. So ultimately, that's why it's my Hercules candidate. I think it just is so consistent, so resilient that you can burn as many resources as you need to get Dargo and flicker it a million times. Phyrexian Altar, just like, obviously crazy. It
great or good.
Yeah, you know, it's just
so cool.
Unbelievable how it just keeps count. Like it's like a storm count.
Yeah.
How many creatures and how many artifacts?
Dargo count.
Yeah, the Dargo count, right? So
yeah, it's super interesting that it's just like one card that has created its own little mechanic in its own little world because of it.
Yeah, we used to use Greater Gargadon for certain things, like as a sack outlet, but this is just, in the command zone. It's better. It's a 7/5. You talked about doing that Giants. You could play a flavorful card, that Giant Strike.
Giants Fury, yes.
Yeah, Giants Fury.
So good.
You know, where you draw 14 cards. Kind of crazy.
And do a ton of damage. That's the other thing. It's like he's a 7/5 that you can get on like turn 1 or 2. Like, yeah, you can get a ton of mana off that with a Burnt Offering, or you can, you know, draw a ton of cards with a Greater Good. Or you can just start swinging for 7 damage. People start dying really quickly.
Yep. Yes, they do. 7 life at the person playing black reduces their ad nos count significantly. So pretty crazy stuff. But
I got to ask you.
Yeah.
Because I think we're pretty much wrapping up here. And
Yes.
I totally agree. I think Dargo is our Hercules candidate.
Mm-hmm.
What is the deck you think is the most Herculean Dargo deck right now that you've seen?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think I've seen Dargo Thrasios probably is the most.
I think that was the one that people started figuring out how good Dargo was.
Yeah, teamer decks have a tough time getting there, I feel like sometimes, because they can be very explosive, but the wheels can fall off if you're...
I find lack of tutors is like really what kills me in teamer.
Yeah, and so alternatively, what we've been talking about is this Grixis list. I don't think it still needs to be more proven to become that Herculean, like a candidate, you know, to become the top candidate for this particular thing. But yeah, I would say the teamer list is probably the leading candidate at the moment.
Yeah,
for,
it is the most explosive. That like
you said, Greater Good has access to these like
right.
ridiculous levels of drawing. You get Neoform, you get like,
yeah, true,
you know, weird things like that can help like fix or explode or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't even honestly think about that. Like Neoform or Eldritch Evolution, your Dargo, and or which one? Eldritch Evolution lets you get or less.
Yeah, anything.
So, yeah, so I mean, literally, you'll rip anything out of your deck.
Yep. So plus you can always Neoform Thrasios into something you might want to. You're just looking for like Thermopod lines in that deck to get infinite mana, so you can activate and draw your entire library anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think Thrasios obviously provides the outlet for the combo piece that is Dargo, so that is pretty nice. And then additionally, you get, I think that not even Thrasios itself, but the colors that he provides gives you a decent mid game. So
yes.
It's like you get to be an explosive deck with solid mid game, so you get to choose when you pop off.
Yep, and interacting on the stack, nothing. You
right.
know, I think I found that with Naya is just it lacks that. Where
right.
you can, I think with this deck in particular, you can still win on the stack, and that's why.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think this is the one we've seen obviously the most playtesting behind and the most people behind it, but because we've like, and not just us, the community is starting to see how good Dargo is. We're seeing all these other decks pop out. We're seeing Sidar Dargo list,
yep.
right? We're seeing Grixis Dargo, which I'm really hyped about. And I just want to see like what these do. Like you give black to a Dargo deck, that seems pretty sweet. Like you can tutor, and you know, we've seen Hoarding Broodlord like kinda. But like, is this a better deck for it? You know, like you get to do different angles that most Grixis decks really don't do.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add. Is like the Burnt Offering part of that is really attractive to me.
You already have it in the deck.
Player, yeah,
yeah.
There, you know, so not only does the Burnt Offering give you 7 mana from Dargo, it also adds a Dargo count. So Dargo is technically 2 less. You can just cast them for 1 red.
Get
mana.
1 red, and the rest is black.
And the rest of it is whatever you want it to be. You know,
oh, that's gross.
That's kind of where I think it's a card that like breaks parity. And that's why I think it's a little bit more explosive.
Yeah, not to mention like
can be more consistent with the tutors.
Totally, yeah, tutors, and then I think it can be more consistently explosive. Like I think it'll be a more turbo deck, a little less mid range than like the green blue deck, or green blue deck. But yeah, then like Ruthless Technomancer, where you all of a sudden you're like
Dockside Loops,
you know, then you all of a sudden reanimate your Broodlord and then go into that combo, and like, you know, there's just so much craziness you get to do with that deck.
Totally. Yeah. I like it a lot.
Very excited. Shout out Dargo. Turns out this is a Dargo and kind of also Rocco episode.
Yeah. No, we really just wanted to touch on the decks that we think can make the transition. Obviously, we think Dargo can make it. Rocco is transitioning right now.
He's got it, dude.
Yeah, and there are just a few decks that stand above the rest, and we've been noticing that and felt it was worth the conversation.
What deck do you feel is not, and I'm talking to you, the listener, not Evan. What deck do you feel deserves a little more respect on the name. Can maybe take on these tasks and maybe become a god of their own.
Earn their spot on Olympus.
This has been the Moxstars podcast, y'all. Thank you for listening. Evan, you got some plugs for us?
Oh, yeah. Huge shout out first to Chris back in Wisconsin. Played his first cEDH tournament and got a dub.
Let's go. First tournament.
Yep. And Brandon went along with him. Unfortunately, couldn't get that dub, but you get it next time, my guy.
Dude, that is just the nature of the beast. I feel like I went 3 in a row without getting a dub.
Yeah, I went 2 full tournaments without getting a dub. So it takes some time. It's not easy.
And sometimes you win and then you go a few tournaments without winning. It's not a tried and true thing.
Yeah.
Just a journey, my man. That's all I'm saying.
But this has been the Moxstars podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to tag along and listen to more, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up, hit that bell for more notifications on when new episodes are coming out. Spoiler alert, it's every single Friday. Every Friday. You can also find us on all major podcasting platforms. Leave a 5-star review because it makes us look really cool. And you can find us on Patreon, where you can become a patron for $3 a month, where you get access to, you get to become an official Pepperhead, where you gain access to 2 exclusive channels on our Discord. Your name becomes Dr. Pepper Red, and you're just a really cool person.
You become a very cool person.
And yeah.
If you're not a cool person, you become a cool person. If you are a cool person, you become a very cool person. For $3, bro, that's actually kind of crazy.
I know, right?
It's kind of gas.
And a huge shout out to all the people who are really cool people and have supported us so far. So thank you so much. I think that's about it. Thanks, all my plugs.
Great plugs.
Oh, wait.
One more plug.
Remember, this is the #1 podcast on the internet for Magic the Gathering and Dr. Pepper. Peace.
Good night.